Thank you all, friends. I'm happy to, oh, I think I'm a little hot here. And also my microphone is. I'm thrilled to introduce to you Susan Sarandon, and I know you guys just spent a couple of glorious hours with her gifts. And we've done this before, but rarely have I been as excited as I am, because I would say I have the most massive girl crush imaginable on this woman, but I think I've passed girls, so I'm like on the woman of a certain age crush. And not just because I wonder what it was like for 4 days to be naked in bed with Catherine Deneuve, but only you can tell us about that.
People got bored after about 2 days, actually.
You know, I would love to...
I didn't, but in the beginning, the crew was in the rafters, and everyone was, all these people that we'd never seen before showed up, and then after a while, it was like, all right, so big deal.
Yeah, well, I guess
but she was,
anything gets
she was
boring,
a very
huh?
good sport. She was great.
Yeah, and you too. I mean, it's interesting. I look around, I see many of my peers, and I know that when I think of Rocky Horror and Thelma and Louise, The Hunger, Bull Durham, on and on, Lorenzo's Oil, I think of so many touchstones in my life have been captured in your work. And forgive me that I'm making this about me, because I'm going to disappear in a moment, I promise. But it's the girl crush thing, and it'll pass. I did promise Ms. Sarandon that we had the smartest and sweetest audience in the world, and I'm going to turn it over to you in just a couple of minutes. But I do have a couple of things I'd like to lob your way, and I'm sure these are familiar questions you've run into, but you, more than a lot of people, play real, authentic, genuine people, and many of whom are still walking this earth as you're playing them. Can you talk to me a little bit, to all of us, about what that process is like to articulate a living soul on the screen? Is that different or unique?
Well, there's good news and bad news. The good news is that you have a lot of research. Mm-hmm. You have, for Dead Man Walking, I found the book and The Nun, and she gave me the book, just trusted me with it on a handshake at dinner. I was doing the client, and I met with her in New Orleans. We were there for the last couple of weeks of the shoot. And so I read her book, so I had all that information. I watched a really wonderful BBC documentary about the death penalty and executions. So a lot of the details, I listened to her lectures, so a lot of the details were little pieces that came together, like the business of eating shrimp for a last meal was something that I saw in the BBC documentary. It wasn't part of her book. Tim very brilliantly combined two people that were in her book. There were cases, and they were both electrocuted, so there were some changes, and Sister Helen was there. There was a good year before Tim even started doing the script once I got the book. And during that time, I got to know Sister Helen very well. Mm-hmm. And she came whenever she was in New York. She stayed with us. So the bad news was that I felt a huge responsibility.
I can only imagine.
Towards her and towards the issue. Although for me, the story was always a love story. Every film that I've ever done, I always have seen as love stories. And this idea as a religious person that you could love unconditionally, mm-hmm. to me is so difficult. I mean, as a mother, you love your kids unconditionally, but that's about it. There's no way you can even love your spouse unconditionally.
It's a really liberated love. And
I think it's an almost impossible love and they don't ask what you've done, and they don't ask if you're guilty. And I talked to a number of people who had helped people die being executed. And there's a real policy, and this is the way they do it. So for me, the question, I remember after I got the book and I had finally absolutely beaten Tim to death to do it, he really resisted. He had something else he wanted to do, and I, had to throw a hissy fit and do, I waited like a year, and then I just melted down and threatened to give it to somebody else, and finally said, okay, and then once it got in his imagination, he did a brilliant job. But I remember that initially he said, so, I forgot to ask you, but you don't think this is about you, do you? I mean, this is about the death penalty. And I said, well, I don't think it's a biography, but I think it's a love story. I think it's a story of redemption. And I think one of the things, the book is brilliant because it really takes both sides. I mean, it shows you the specifics of what it costs everybody that's involved, which whatever side of the issue you come down on, that dialogue usually doesn't happen. So people have very strong feelings about the death penalty, just like they do about abortion, with very little specifics. And I think what Dead Man Walking did was give the specifics and allow for a dialogue to begin. And that dialogue continues. And I know that it has been very healing for people that are involved with violent crimes. The one line that I added at the end when he says, I wish I had your faith, and she said, it's not faith, it's hard work, actually wasn't from Sister Helen. It was a woman that I met whose 7-year-old daughter had been murdered, and she had been taken from their tent when they were camping, and they never found her. And a year on the anniversary of when the girl disappeared, the murderer called the mother, and she was able to keep him on the phone for a very long time because she had gotten to the point in the name of her daughter, who she felt would not want her to be filled with hatred, that she could actually talk to him. And they were able to eventually figure out, because of that phone conversation and tire tracks that were near where he plugged into it. Anyway, it's a long thing, but they found him in San Francisco, and that he had killed someone else, and they were able to find him because of this. But she was the one that said to me, I don't have faith. Every day I have to work at forgiveness. Every day I have to work at opening my heart. And the family, when we were at Angola, because that was really filmed in the death house, there was an execution. And the parents of the girl went to all the executions. After their daughter's murderer was executed, they continued to visit and go to prisons wherever there were executions. And the daughter that was remaining in the house ran away, was completely ignored. Their whole life became about this process. And
well, that's hard work too. I mean, hate is hard work too. And so
hate, the problem is that, it doesn't help watching the execution. And it's either too fast or too easy or because of course it doesn't bring your child back, which is the only thing that would make you feel better. And so it's very disappointing actually for families that hinge everything on seeing that execution, and then it happens and they don't feel satisfied. And usually it's very hard for the marriages to, they break up, and the rest of the family is ignored. So it ends up not being satisfying even to get what you think is going to be the thing that will make you feel so much better. It really doesn't help. So it's very unsatisfying.
It's interesting, as you talk about it, I mean, you stop talking about the character pretty quickly and start talking about the big ideas. And it prompts in my mind the notion that you're also pretty renowned for social activism and for taking... Well, and I was going to say, and taking causes more than to heart and more than photo ops. I mean, you've actually gone to the Hooskow. They carried you off in the bus one night, didn't they?
My job is about imagining, and if you can imagine, then you empathize, and if you empathize, then it's pretty hard not to be active. So it's a pretty easy process to get to that place. And also I came of age at a time when the issues were much clearer because the media was not corporate as it is now. And so, you know, a war was stopped and we had good music and good drugs and, you know, it was just a time when you felt very empowered. And
Right.
so that, I think that just carried through and then was reinforced when I fell into this profession because it, you know, I think all artists, and I use that term arrogantly, but I think that your job is to look at things from another point of view, and it's great when a film or an artwork or music can reframe something for you and just have you identify with somebody that you don't normally identify with, and then leave and have discussions and
And does that
arguments
lifelong immersion and education feel like, gosh, I don't want to sound like I'm classist, but like a position of privilege that you've had in some ways to be able to look through these eyes and have these experiences?
Oh, I think it's like
Do you feel wildly grateful? Or?
I feel very grateful, and I feel like, you know, I've had so many incarnations and that it's kind of an enforced compassion, and I'm very lucky to have that. And I'm basically suffer from inertia like everybody else, and I'm lazy, and so it gives you an opportunity to look into little microcosms, whether it's, you know, minor league baseball or whether or not it's, you know, I don't know, transgender guys in stockings, I don't know. And you get a chance to do all of these things with a minimum amount of repercussions,
Right.
as opposed to actually doing them. And so it's a great job.
But you have to do them very publicly, too. You know, there's a degree of exposure and risk and vulnerability involved in that, too, isn't there?
Yeah. But I mean, it's a pretty amusing way to earn a living. I mean, it's,
yes.
you don't know when your vacation's going to be, and you don't know how much longer you'll work, and, you know, there's absolutely no, I mean, there's no justice. There's so many actors. I mean, there are many women who could have done Dead Men Walking. I just got the book and happened to be the one that got it
The difference
going.
is that you did it.
No, I did it, but I'm saying there are all of us that are, you know, there are a lot of people that could do a very good job with a lot of the parts that Meryl Streep gets. And
But not after Meryl Streep does them.
no, but the bad thing for other actresses is that once you start to hit, then you get all the projects. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that are doing regional theater. I mean, not just women, but men, all kinds of really talented actors who just don't have a shot at really good material or good directors. And finally, at the end of the day, you know, you got to buy your French doors and put your kids through school and do whatever you're doing. And so you work and you do the best you can with what you've got. That's, you know, what everybody does in their jobs, right? That you just do the best you can.
Every actress, so in the last bunch of Academy Award nominees, was over 40. And I remember a time in the not too distant past where there was a big concern about actresses moving past 40 and never working. And you've worked consistently your whole life. And I think a lot of that's talent, but a lot of that might be the circumstance of the changing audience and I'm not trying to diminish your obvious luminosity, but I mean.
It won't be diminished.
No?
I don't know why
I'm not throwing shade, but I'm just saying, I mean, how great, though, that we get to enjoy your talent through your entire life.
Well, I mean,
too.
certainly the age thing has pushed, and I've been part of the people that have pushed it in terms of how much you work or what kind of part you play and
sustaining
everything else.
your sexuality past having children.
I'm just a very good listener.
Yeah.
That's what looks sexy on screen. If you're a good listener, and this is for you guys out there too, be a good listener. This is what I tell my boys. But the bottom line is that also more female actors are finding material, optioning books. There are still much fewer good parts for women of any age, or a woman of color. Forget about it, you know. So I think what's happened now is that there are more women who are just finding properties, and there hasn't been any huge. They said after Thelma and Louise made a lot of money, you know, that there'd be so many more parts for women, but it's not true.
Have you heard of that thing? What is that scale called where if there's two women and they each have a name and they talk to each other about something other than a man in a film, that it's a scale. Have you guys run into it? It's called like the Holdgert scale or something. But I mean,
I thought it was just like a chick flick. So I always wondered why they never called the other ones dick flicks.
I think we just have a new subgenre for the film festival, the dick flick.
The bottom line is that the guys do get paid more and they have more parts and everything, but
Yeah.
I don't know that they're good parts necessarily. You are such a good screamer.
She listens well,
You're
too.
a very good listener. I think that, what you want is, first of all, to have a good time and to keep challenging yourself when you're working and to try to do as many different things as you can. I mean, I think there's some actors that have really strong personalities, and so they kind of do the same thing over and over. They tend to get paid more. And then there are character actors that I consider myself to be one of, and so you change a lot of things, and I think that's a little bit more tenuous, but actually longevity is probably easier if you're a character actor.
Right,
Because
yeah.
the base of what you're doing is broader. So
And the work, do you think the work is more interesting as you age, too? I mean, is there more
No,
complexity
I'm
roles?
so happy if I'm not dying or help someone die these
Yeah.
days. No, I don't
died
think
on stage, but I did get to show my breast first, so that was nice.
that's both.
At once.
Excellent.
Yeah. I thought of you.
Breasts go a long way.
Atlantic City.
You want to
changed
make
my
sure
life.
you're not saying anything important for the first 10 seconds, because
Or
no one gets anything you're
or
saying.
holding lemons in my hand.
Oh. Well, lemons are
Lemons are good. Would you, and I'm going to turn over to you guys. I swear I'm going to share with you in just a minute, but it's going to take just a minute longer. And I'm going to stay on this women's topic for a moment longer. I saw you in an interview and you were talking about that film you just did with De Niro and Diane Keaton. And you were the mistress and she was the ex-wife or something. And you commented at the time that typically when there are two women in a film, one's older and one's younger, and they're bitching at each other or something like that.
No, what happens is that if you're with a male star, then there's a rumor that you're having an affair. If you're with a female star, then the rumor is that you don't get along. When Julia and I did Stepmom and we produced it, we were friends, and the rumors flew that we weren't getting along. And the reason, usually when they put two women in a movie, they automatically are enemies, even if they don't have a reason. Especially if one's older and one's younger, that's just a given. So that's the way that it, usually. But when I did The Tempest, and Jenna Rollins was playing John Cassavetes' wife, and I was
no,
the
she's
mistress.
actually a patron saint here. She's been on
She's
this
the
stage
best.
twice.
Oh.
And she smells so good.
I believe that. But she had scenes with me as the mistress that were very petty and and she just played them completely the opposite. And I learned a lot from that. She was, had such integrity, and she was so generous.
Yeah.
And so even when it's written that way, it doesn't have to be played that way, which she taught me. So I'm glad. Where is she? That she's here so often.
We just brought her around a bunch of times because we love her guts. And
She's
Seymour, too, so, and we've done a lot of Cassavetes stuff here. It's kind of a thing. Well, and which naturally leads to the other important topic, which is ping pong. And I understand, and came up, Margaret actually texted me today and said, you must ask her about the ping pong parlor called Spin. And then I also want to ask you, and you can, vamp on this however you wish. You just produced and starred in a film that was at Sundance called Ping Pong Summer, set in the 80s. And so you're wearing all my favorite fashions. So can you talk about the ping pong thing? It frankly seemed a little random when I first heard about it on CBS Sunday Morning.
I'm so glad to hear that.
And now I'm just completely intrigued because in the 80s it was the deal because of the Chinese ping pong guys.
I mean, oh yeah, that's true too.
Yeah, I
But,
thought maybe that's where it came from.
where can I start? Ping pong's a great game. I'm not that great at it, but it is random, and that's one of the things that I think helped us with our club, because it was just such a weird thing.
And why
when people
not?
heard my name connected with it, we got so much press, and that really helped us in the beginning. my friend Jonathan Brooklyn, who's here, and his pal, Frank Rianarsi, were giving parties in a loft, and they added a ping pong table, and it made it so much better, and then they added 2. And then they thought they were really great, so they started trying to compete, and they found out they sucked. And so they kind of infiltrated the ping pong world, and so they started meeting people, and they realized that there was nowhere to play in New York that was really beautiful and had nice lighting or good tables or food, and actually, how about booze? Because every sport you can drink, but ping pong, no one had ever been able to pull that off. So they had this
And
dream.
you've got a free hand for the drink while you're
You can, yeah. And so they had this dream, and it's a long story, but eventually I got involved. And we opened a club in New York that's a beautiful club with 17 tables. It's open 7 days a week, and we have people that play really seriously, and then and there's music, and there's good food, and then there are people that just come on dates or give birthday parties, or we've had rap parties there. Wall Street 2, the rap party was there, and it's nice because it gives people something to do, and they play facing each other. And then once I started getting involved, and I realized how it cuts across gender and age and body type and everything, because little girls can beat their dads, and
nice.
little geeky kids can be really good at it if they're not huge muscle bound. We started donating tables in the underserved schools in New York, and now it just became a scholastic sport in New York, which is great because, thank you. I think it's 14 schools or so that we've given tables to more than that, but that actually are using it as part of their program, because you can't hurt yourself. It's great for your mind. It's great for your body. You can play it until you drop. It's not like basketball where eventually you have to stop, or baseball or whatever. It's not expensive. So it's kind of a no-brainer, and people really have a good time. So strangely, I have become the face of ping pong, and I'm not even really that good, but I really love it, and I love what it's about. And we're franchising now, because in spite of the fact that we didn't know how to run a business, it's been doing great from day one.
Toronto? Yeah.
There's a great one in Toronto. There's one in LA. There's one in Dubai. In case you want to play on a gold-plated table, there's one in Dubai, and there's one in New York. So, anyone else is interested, we can tell you how to do that.
What's the connection to Ping Pong Summer?
Only that I was obviously a good choice to go to in doing a low-budget film, because I already had ping pong in my family. And the Duplass brothers, who directed Jeff, Who Lives at Home,
We love them.
Yeah, I love them too. And they're friends with the guy who directed it, and he'd grown up in Ocean City, Maryland, and went there for vacations, and loved ping pong, and just wrote a very funny script. And so it's kind of like Karate Kid, but with ping pong, and I'm Mr. Miyake. So. But I've given it up. It's like the
paddle on, paddle off. Yeah.
It's like the anti Mr. Miyake, because I say, well, if I wanted to be really, really good, I would have had to give up so many things, and didn't want to do that. And
so
I wanted to have fun.
The young hero awakens your latent hunger to be great?
No. I just helped him beat the bully. Didn't you see Karate Kid? That's what that's about. Yeah.
Would anyone like to ask a question or make a statement to our special guest tonight? Yes, ma'am, right here. And we need microphones, do we have floating mics? And I'll repeat, but we'd really love a floating mic if it were possible. And here it comes. Thank you so much.
After doing a piece like your character in this movie, how do you debrief?
That's a good question. Well, I finished, the way that it was shot, we went to New Orleans for a month and shot all the exteriors, some of which didn't get in because we really didn't think it would hold just the two of us. It seemed to be way too much, just the two of us. Then we went to New York, and for a month, we just did Sean and I. So there was actually, in order, a countdown to him being killed, which was very helpful and really difficult. And I had one day after he finished, and he came in shaved and with a different hairdo, and I was completely flabbergasted because we were so glued together, and he is so good. And yeah. And I don't think you could find anybody that could be that vulnerable and that scary simultaneously. And he really, just hooked me in. And I didn't realize until we wrapped and that I was really, my skin hurt. I was really, really tense. And, but I felt, you feel like you did the best you can, then you can let go of it. And all my kids are in the movie. I had a 1.5-year-old, and he's in the scene in the church. My daughter was 8, and she plays me young, that was her first part, and she was really good. And my other son, who's younger than she is, was chasing also the possum, so they were all with me, and obviously you can't indulge too much. But I was surprised. I think that was one of the hardest, especially also because of Sister Helen, and Sister Helen being there and feeling so much responsibility, because other people that I played either were dead or, I didn't have a personal connection, but I was feeling an extraordinary amount of responsibility. And the fact that Tim and I were still talking to each other at that point was a miracle. And there was so much stress. But the crew, it was a fairly low-budget movie, and everybody that was on it, and Roger Deakins was just brilliant. I mean, what he did as the DP of that film was shockingly. I mean, he tested so many different screens and trying to figure out when you were inside and when you were outside and how to cover that. And I'm not wearing any makeup, that was really a challenge in itself. So I have to say, I'm not one of those people that can't remember my real name and I think I'm my character and all that bullshit. That does not happen to me. But I was pretty, I didn't realize till we finished just how focused and tied in we were. Because when he really was strapped in, and that is, I remember some of the reviews were saying, they went so far to do that Christ imagery. That is exactly what they do. And that was the death house that we shot in. I mean, not when he was strapped in, but outside of it with the buffet. That's the actual place. And
in Angola, right?
In Angola. And there was an execution there while we were there. And we went not into the room, but we were outside afterwards. And Sister Helen is in the vigil that was filmed, and she was in the vigil there. But once he got strapped in, I stayed with him. He couldn't leave, he couldn't eat. All he wanted to do was smoke. He's so dramatic. So, I stood with him the whole time and helped him smoke and did whatever I could to kind of make him more comfortable. And
How long did that sequence take to shoot?
well, we worked from the beginning to the end, just the two of us, for a month, and a month before that in New Orleans. And there was an armory right across from our apartment in New York, and we shot in there. And it was the first time it had been used as a studio, so I could just get up in the morning and walk across the street.
It's not the one that's like a big porn house now, is it?
No, now it's apartment buildings. They tore it down and they built apartment buildings.
Another question, please. Yes.
My name is Lynn, and I'd just like to say that you are amazing, and it's not acting. I feel as though it's you, and you said so yourself. I lost my son 14 months ago.
Oh my God, I'm so
and
sorry.
Your words at the end of this meant so much to me that I would just like to say thank you, and that you're so genuine, and you amaze me, and tonight has been fantastic for me, and it's not a question and answer, just a thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
There at the back, we're moving it right there.
Hi, Susan. My name is Lisa, and I teach a high school film analysis course here in Central Florida. My students just finished watching Thelma and Louise. And high school kids like closure, and they had a huge problem with the end. What can I go back and tell them, and I can say, this is from the horse's mouth? And you were wonderful, but they loved it, but they were besides themselves about the end of the film.
Did they have a problem with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?
They actually watch a clip of that prior in a Western unit, so they didn't see the whole film. But I think they were stunned as to how it ended. They, I don't know, wanted to see the car land, or I'm not quite sure what they wanted, but...
Well, let me just, on a sidebar, let me tell you that Dead Man Walking is a play that is done in schools, just in case you're interested, anybody that's connected to a school. It can be done as a, and it's done in high schools, it's done in all girls schools, all boys. I mean, I've seen it done. You just have to have 2 other classes that in some way deal with those questions. Thelma and Louise is funny because when I met with Ridley Scott, I said to him, are you going to test this and then the car is going to land and we're not going to die? Because I want to make sure, you know, that happens. You, as an actor, you don't have any control if they decide to change the ending or reshoot something. He said, well, I can tell you that you definitely will die, but I'm not so sure about her. And that's how we started it. And there was a huge scene at the end of the really talky scene, and I just said, you know, I really have a problem by the and we shot the end of the movie on the last day. And I said, you know, early on, I said, there's just so much dialogue. By that time, they're finishing each other's sentences. They're not saying, you're my best friend, I really love you, and so we put all the dialogue for the end on a car chase where we're shouting it. And then we just had that little bit, and we only had a take because magic hour was happening. And of course, they'd spent the whole day doing the helicopter and the cars pulling up and everything else. So we really had one take. And I told Ridley that I was going to kiss her because that wasn't in the script either. And he said, fine. And I felt that by the time we got to that we had earned it. And I think that it just is that romantic convention of not, you know, that is in Jules and Jim, that is in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but for some reason, because it's women, people got very bent out of shape about that option and never said that Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid condoned suicide, never, you know, and I thought that Ridley was brilliant in the choice of music and the way that he freeze-framed it and the Polaroid and everything, but I mean, what would have been more satisfying? You should ask them. Would it have been cool for them to be in jail for years? I don't know.
Or more memorable.
I thought we could end up at Club Med or something, but I think the car is still stuck. That was actually in Utah. And part of the Grand Canyon in Utah, or whatever that canyon is, and that car is, I don't think they've managed to get it out yet.
Other questions, please?
You are so wonderful. You're on a short list of actors for whom I will go see any movie you're in just because I know your performance will be brilliant.
I'll try very hard from you from now on. That's a huge, no, I'm serious. When people tell me that, I say I try to choose movies that are going to turn out okay, but you never know.
Can you tell us about how you learned the craft, how you filmed the craft? What was it in the beginning that...
First of all, saying craft always makes me a little scary. I never studied acting. This is a bad story. You're not going to like this. I went to 4 years of college, and I went and I did study drama, but more in the academic sense at Catholic University. I married Chris Sarandon at 20. First guy I slept with, that's how grateful I was. He was a...
Well, it's important, though, that's the framework of Catholic University, too.
And it was the framework of Catholic University, and he was 6 years older, a graduate student. He knew everything about black and white films and poetry and everything. Anyway, he was a really nice guy, and after I graduated, he went to the Long Wharf Theater in Connecticut. Someone saw him there doing a play, and they asked him to come audition for an agent and a manager, and he needed someone to do a scene with him, and I did a scene with him, and then he went away to do summer stock, and I followed like the good little wife that I was, and then we went to New York that fall, and they had been looking for somebody to do a movie called Joe, which was a low-budget feature film, the first feature film that wasn't pornographic that this company had done. And it was their foray into a serious film. And I went, and it was John Alvinson directing, although he wasn't in the Directors Guild yet. And they'd been looking for somebody to play this part, and they asked me to improvise, and they explained to me what that was, and I did an improvisation. I did a couple of, I mean, seriously, acting is not rocket science. And I did it, and they left the room, and then they came back, and they told me that I had the job. And I thought, okay, well, that was pretty easy. And then the movie was a huge hit. And I think that when I see it now, I just had this sense not to try to act. And I mean, I think that I then got on a soap opera where I got to learn a lot about working with cameras, because that's basically theater and film. And I really just had on-the-job training and was lucky to work with a lot of people. And on the soap opera, I was the girl everything happened to. I was on it for a year, and my crises
That's hard
increased.
work.
It's very hard work, but you know, what did I know? I was like 21 at that point. And I just kept working, and I thought it was a riot. You know, I thought, wow, I pay off my school debt, and then after a while, I thought, well, it seems like this is what I do. You know, I guess I'm an actor, and I took it. I mean, I was very responsible, but I think that any kind of artistic endeavor and any kind of life endeavor, the more playful you can be, the more interesting it is, and the more surprised you are. And acting is really such a wonderful way to constantly be surprised if you can surrender to it. And so that part of it really appealed to me, and I didn't know where it was going, and I kept thinking that, you know, now sometimes I wish I'd taken it a little more seriously, but it worked for me that way. And I think that by doing, I just eventually, you know, and I did Broadway, and I did plays in small theaters and big theaters, and but it is just listening and reacting. Although Tony Perkins once said to me, you know, being real is great, but it's not always interesting. So when you see people like Jack Nicholson, or you see Walken, or Sean, or you know, Vanessa Redgrave, or I mean, there's so many wonderful actors. Sometimes people are just so interesting to watch, no matter what they do.
They've got like the extra ingredient, you know, or something.
Yeah, and maybe the camera loves them,
Yeah.
or and it doesn't have to do with being smart. It doesn't have to do necessarily with being beautiful. It doesn't necessarily. I mean, I don't know what it is, but I'm really glad that I've been able to make a living. I have one son now who's a director, trying to be a director, is directing, and a daughter who's been acting since she was 8. With some frustration,
Yeah.
you know, and I
have
keep
to ask
saying,
you-
why is this your fallback job? Are you crazy? You know, if you're not having a good time. But she works. She said, well, I just keep working, Mom. What else can I do? I was like, okay, I guess.
I heard you say one time in an interview or something that you actually try to keep some distance from her career so that she's,
Well, she definitely kept some distance from me.
yeah.
Definitely. We worked together in Banger
Banger
Sisters,
Sisters,
and
yeah.
we worked together. We've worked together a few times, but then at a certain point, when she did Saved, which is a great movie if you haven't seen it, it's a really funny movie, and she's kick-ass in it. She's great. But, you know, I think every kid has to distance themselves from their parents and especially if they're in the same business, it becomes
Right.
really difficult. And so it's a mixed blessing. I always say to them, okay, well, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are we with the downside? And you know, maybe it's 6, and I say, okay, where are we with the perks? And they'll say maybe 8. I say, okay, so we're up by 2 at the moment. And I think that there's nothing you can do about it except, I mean, they all went into the business. My youngest is a musician, but he's, you know, I don't know. It's unavoidable, I guess.
Another question? Where's the microphone? Oh, in the back.
Hi, Susan. You are just an incredible inspiration to so many of us. You've had such a long career. My partner, Matthew, was at CU when you were there.
Oh, my God.
And remembers watching you in some of your early productions there in the drama. So that's quite a legacy. Was there ever a part that you really wanted so badly that you didn't get? And then what is a project that you see that you would really like to see happen before you leave this bus stop? Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Well, I mean, in hindsight, I don't think I knew so many things. I'd find out about them later that I wish that I could have done. If I saw a part that looked great, I'd think, oh, well, that would have been nice to have a shot at that. The one that I auditioned for over and over and over and over and over for, it must have been 6 weeks, they just kept calling me in, was the movie, I can't remember, someone might know what it is, I can't remember now, but it was Marlon Brando and Jack Nicholson, and a gal that I don't think did very much after that. It was a Western.
Missouri Breaks?
Missouri Breaks. What? No, I think it was called, it might have been Missouri Breaks, I think. Anyway, I auditioned for that forever. And every week they'd call, and and finally when they called, they said, we just decided to go with a blue suit instead of a brown one. And I remember,
You've been wearing that blue suit
and
ever
I'm wearing
since.
my blue suit.
Yeah.
But I remember feeling that I had, really tried hard for that. But you do kind of get used to the cycle of not getting things.
Well, and
once
I
you
mean,
audition
it's
a
just
lot.
so far out of your hands, and in terms of casting. I mean,
Well,
I'm sure
now
you've done-
it's really, such a big business. They're casting people based on how many Twitter followers you have, and it's a whole other mentality, which I suppose should make you feel even better because it's so absurd. But people always look for justice when there is none, so it is still frustrating for people.
At what point in your career did you get involved in Rocky Horror Picture Show? From Catholic University to Rocky Horror Picture Show.
I see the connection immediately.
Well, actually, that was another weird story because a friend of mine was in the stage production with Tim Curry in LA. So I had met Tim and I knew Tim. And my dad was a big band singer, and I had always been told that I couldn't sing. And I had such a phobia about even humming out loud. And for some reason, every time I went up for a stage thing in New York, they would ask you to sing Oklahoma, and nothing would come out. And so I thought, this is so much ego. Everybody should be comfortable. Doesn't mean you sing great, but you should be able to. Singing is kind of part of being human, right? Or humming. So I knew that it was my own self-esteem and my ego that was making it so difficult. So anyway, I was scheduled to do a different movie, and I went by just to say hi to Tim, and they were casting the film. And they really only had 2 parts that were available because everybody else was doing the other parts, and that was Barry Bostwick's part and what ended up being my part.
Janet.
And they had always had people that could sing that part really well, but she was never funny. And they asked me to read, and I was like, well, I can't really sing. They said, all right, just read it. And she was kind of, I thought, kind of a just kind of a takeoff on all the ingenues I'd be playing, where she was an ingenue, but she had this kind of bitchy thing going on underneath. And so they laughed, and they said, oh, come on, you can sing this. Can you sing Happy Birthday? And anyway, so they asked me to do it, and I thought, okay, I'll get over my phobia about singing. I'll get to England. They'll give me alcohol and drugs, and we'll figure out a way to get over this.
That's a great rehearsal process.
And of course they didn't. And I had to just kind of brave through it. And when it came out, because it was such a cheap film, not cheap, but inexpensive, I don't think of it as cheap, but it was very shocking at the time. And so Fox never really released it. And 2 guys at Fox started giving it to, so it sat. It opened in LA and disappeared in 2 days, and it never went anywhere else. And then they started feeding it to art houses and gay cinemas and things like that. And years later is when it turned into this phenomenon. So it kind of, built this don't dream it, be it phenomenon and rites of passage for so many kids. And it's funny because journalists very often say, kind of put me in a defensive position and assume that somehow I'm ashamed of being part of it. And I'm not. And I think it's a really amusing, great film, and that Tim is just, when he came on stage, that was one of the most blistering, shocking, sexy, amazing entrances that has ever been on a stage. And
it never wears out. I mean,
no.
it's still...
Well, the thing that's interesting was the film was supposed to be in black and white until he comes down in the elevator and you see his red lips. And then they wouldn't give them the money to process it, so the whole film's in color, but it would have been pretty cool. It's a good idea. Lorenzo's Oil also was filmed with the idea that as he got sicker, it would fade to black and white. And then when you realize that he's in there, the color starts to come back, and they didn't, it was shot that way, and then they didn't process that either.
Oh. We have a question down here in front if there's a microphone nearby. And here she comes.
You're embarrassed to get the microphone?
It's down here.
Oh.
Did I embarrass you, my dear?
Okay. Hi.
Hi.
My name is Madison, and I'm 16 years old.
And you're adorable, Madison.
And you've got good jewelry, too.
Well, I have Susan Sarandon on my bracelet.
Oh, my God.
And I have...
How am I on your bracelet?
Oh.
Let me see. Oh, my...
And I have a New Dawn, a New Day.
If you weren't so cute, that would be creepy. But you are too sweet. A New Dawn, a New Day is a great...
And you wear a New Dawn, a New Day, too.
Well, I have a tattoo that's A-N-D-A-N-D, which is for a New Dawn, a New Day, which is the lyric of that song, but also means, now remember this, it means that if you're hurt or you've hurt someone or you've done something that in the dawn, in the new day, you get another chance and it'll get better or you'll be able to make it better. And so when I'm having a tough time or something and I see that, it reminds me.
That's what I do, too.
She can't go to school without that on because it's going to be a bad day. She calls me, Mom, I didn't just get my bracelet on.
Oh my God. Don't get a tattoo until a little later.
I know, that's why I got a bracelet.
Madison, did you have a question or observation?
Yeah. What is the highlight of your career, would you say?
What is the highlight of my career? Well, I mean, if I was going to win an Academy Award, I certainly was happy to win it for Dead Man Walking because having found the book and produced the movie. So I suppose that was kind of like the team trophy, and because it meant so much to so many people and because it meant that people would read Sister Helen's book, that, she went from lecturing to 100 people to lecturing to thousands and thousands. She gave the Pope, not this Pope, not the one before, but the one before the movie, because he was being quoted as pro-death penalty and he wasn't. And so I think that was very satisfying to be trusted with something and to make it happen and to see that it's had so much power to heal people and to start conversations and things. So I guess that, I'd have to say the birth of my kids was my most fabulous thing that I've ever done. I'm sure your mom feels the same way. My daughter's going to have a baby in August, so now that's like...
And that's your first grandchild?
Yeah, and my brain's like completely doing somersaults. I can't wait. And she's really excited. So, you're welcome.
And now the gentleman that I tore the microphone out of his hand to give it to Madison. Thank you for your question.
Was there ever a part you regretted turning down?
No. No. No, and I've never regretted even the ones that have turned out badly, because sometimes you learn more, just like in relationships with bad ones, than you do with the good ones. So I really, everything has gotten me to, where I am now, so it's all makes sense in hindsight. But nothing ever came my way that I said no to. I maybe should have said fewer yeses sometimes, I don't know, but never a no.
In the back? Is there a microphone back there?
Yep.
Your acquaintance with Joseph Campbell's writings influenced your acting and your role choices.
Wow, that's
Did you guys hear that? The question was, has her acquaintance with Dr. Joseph Campbell's writings been influential in your career choices?
Acting and role choices.
Well, I mean, I think all the myths repeat themselves over and over, and I think I became very interested in story. I mean, the fact that we write our story. Each person writes their story, and I've always hoped that my films encourage people to be the protagonist in their own lives. That whether it's White Palace with somebody just leaving her boyfriend, or whether or not it's Dead Man Walking, which is a bigger thing, that really what you want to do is be the protagonist in your own life. And I think that we write stories for ourselves, and we have to be careful with the kind that we write. If you become a victim in your stories over and over, it's a very non-productive pattern to be in. And so I think that as we create our stories by who we associate with and where we spend our energy and we create ourselves, that I think I have been influenced by his way of framing myths and storytelling, for sure. And I think as a writer, you're influenced also a lot by Joseph Campbell. I mean, he's definitely has been. Did you see the thing that I narrated? Is that how you knew that? Yeah, I was lucky to do that.
Where's the microphone? Is it? Thank you, in the back. In the back. No, we don't all need to yell.
First of all, thank you very much for coming to Florida. I was in Sedona as well, and I narrowly missed hearing you speak there, so I'm very honored to be here as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about your social justice documentary work lately, some of the projects that you're working on, and what, just if you can enlighten us as to what motivates you with some of those projects?
I've been very lucky through the years to do a lot of voiceovers for documentaries, probably because I work cheap. People found out, and I get a lot of information. In fact, I did the series on CNN that's been on about all of how badly the justice system works, that's been airing, that Robert Redford did, which is about people on death row. And so recently, with two friends, with Jonathan Bricklin and Thomas Morgan, we ended up making some documentaries and decided that we would form a company that we've called Reframed Pictures, because the idea of documentaries is to give you the opportunity to maybe reframe your view of an issue. And we give finishing funds to filmmakers. And the nice thing about that is that you can see something that's almost finished and know pretty much what it's going to be. So we have a film, my son Jack Henry, when he graduated from USC, went across country and did a documentary about the different demographics of homeless people, challenging the notion of who's homeless and why, talking about the hidden homeless, talking about how difficult it is to exist on the street, how people get there. And so that's one of the films. It's called Storied Streets. And then there's one about a gal that I had nominated for the CNN Heroes Award that you might have seen, Pushpa, and she's in Nepal, and she's rescuing kids from prison, because in Nepal, if your parents go to prison, your mom goes to prison, and you're under 10, you go with her. And she started at 21 to take these kids out, and eventually has adopted a lot of them, and she got the CNN Hero Award and got some money, so now she's building her own house, and there's a documentary about her. And then our first real big finishing funds went to a film called Silenced, which will be at the Tribeca Film Festival, and that's about all the whistleblowers that have been prosecuted under Obama, who has prosecuted more whistleblowers than all the other presidents put together. You might not have known that. And a lot of whom, I mean, almost all of them worked in government agencies, and one woman was actually on the ethics committee, and when she pointed out that they were lying, they seized her information and ruined her life, and have systematically come down on these people. One is now serving actually a prison term. So that's in Tribeca. And so basically people just come to us, and we need more investors so that we can do more films. But we just started a little while ago. I mean, the ink is just drying on the page. So I would like to actually always imagine that maybe at some point I could do documentaries, and so I'm kind of learning.
Do you have a distribution plan on those? Are they?
No, the way we're looking at it is depending on the film, goes the distribution. I mean, that is, of course, the question, but we have a very, very prestigious board, and we think that we'll be able to get them. And film festivals are really what keep documentaries alive, because people are more eager to put them on TV, or when they see that it gets the audience award, or when it gets, some kind of support. And that's true of, like, Ping Pong Summer. That was true too. When people responded to that, then they believe in the film more, and then they want to do something more with it. So film festivals are very, very, very important.
One of the nice things too about a film festival screening on a doc is because so many of them go on demand or something immediately, and they're watched in isolation. And the opportunity to put a documentary before a shared audience of strangers sitting together galvanizes, I think, the potential for political action to follow, versus somebody sitting on their own go, oh, that's a real bummer. It's very different when you have a room
Well, that
full of
is what you
people.
have to do, is have some kind of follow-through afterwards, of course, is very, very important. But I think people, because of being able to order things in your home, are more open to documentaries and are seeing more documentaries. And documentaries, you see something like The Act of Killing, it's not even a documentary, it's an extraordinary film, and I think they're getting more and more ambitious and more creative. And then there are some that are just really good reality kind of documentaries. But there are also those little cameras. I mean, there's so many people that are making films now.
Why don't you sit on our doc committee with us next year? It's so much fun, and they feed us.
And they feed you.
It's great. Another question is, I keep on pointing to the back because I think you might have the microphone back there. Oh, wait. Here, right there. Nice young lady.
Can you describe how making Bull Durham was, since it's so much fun to watch? Was it that much fun to make?
Yeah. It was funny because nobody wanted me for that movie. I only got to audition for it because everybody they wanted wouldn't read. And because Ron Shelton was a first-time director, he really felt it necessary to have whoever was going to do it read with Kevin. Kevin was the first person in. He was really hot on and off screen at that time. And he had the power to stand by Ron, who was a first-time director. Ron had been had been in baseball, and had the script for a very long time.
Did you pay your own way out to the...
So I was living in Italy. The father of my daughter, my first child, is Italian, and I was living in Italy. And as I said, they weren't really interested in me, but I flew myself to Los Angeles. I left my little baby at home, my 2-year-old at home. And so I was just going for the day to audition and turned right around and come back. And was very insulted that I had to audition. I mean, it wasn't like it was the beginning of my career. I was all bent out of shape, but the script was so good. And again, my ego, I thought, okay, you have all this time going from Italy to LA to talk yourself into a more productive place. And I did, and I went and I met with Kevin and Ron, and we read the entire movie. And then I went on the way out to the studio and kind of said hi to the executives, who all looked about 12, and went back to Italy. Mm-hmm. And we didn't have a phone, and a few days later the neighbor came and said, you have a phone call, and I got it. But and also Tim only got his part because Matthew Modine turned it down to do the other baseball movie, which was John Sayles' movie.
The Black White Sox or whatever.
Yeah.
8 Men Out.
8 Men Out, thank you very much.
I have
But
no idea.
the question was it fun? Yes, it was really fun. And I went into the movie thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be stuck in a movie with all these jocks. They're going to be a nightmare. And it turned out that I was treated with more respect than I had been on any other film that I'd been on. They never had shown me dailies. They never involved me in everything. He completely, and Kevin, it was just equal right across. Everybody got along. I was at the height of making barbecue sauce at that time, and all the guys came over and had barbecue chicken constantly.
It's a legendary recipe, too.
It is a very good recipe. And the rest is, I mean, you can see that there was a lot of love involved in that, and I think it's kind of iconic because, for instance, all the Rangers or the basketball teams all watch that movie also because all of those prototypes exist in other sports also. And so it's really fun to have that. I really am proud. And she was, so strong and so funny and could have sex and not be killed for it. So
Fearlessly
it
smart.
was really fun.
I'm going to ask one, and forgive me if I take somebody else's question, but Burt Lancaster in Atlantic City, what was it like?
He was adorable. He was...
I mean, what an icon.
Yeah, but it was the first time that he had been asked to play somebody older and actually had to make his hair whiter than it was. And so that part of it was kind of difficult.
It was the first time he was asked to play somebody old. I mean, he was pretty old.
Yeah, but he hadn't played, I remember we were in Atlantic City and there were people saying, is that really Burt Lancaster? They hadn't seen him older.
Yeah.
But he was very much, for instance, when we went to do the scene where I kind of give myself to him, he really felt that it was letting his fans down for me to give myself to him instead of him to take me, like on the beach,
Like on a beach.
And there was actually a long conversation. And in the directions of the script, it says, like a doe in the headlights, she goes towards him as he's speaking. And to his credit, he did it ultimately the way that it was written. But he was very comfortable with the idea of kind of educating me, just like in the movie, and often talked about, Kate and Anna, Kate Hepburn, Anna Magnani, how he had also helped them. And so I think that was kind of his way of relating to women, and was very sweet. And years later, when he did the Scottish movie, what was that one called? Bill Forsyth's movie.
Oh, Local Hero.
Thank you very much. I think that was his last film. I called him up and I said, you were so great in that film, and, congratulations and everything else. And he said, thank you very much. And he hung up. And then the phone rang and he called me back and he said, I'm so sorry I didn't ask you how you are. He said, but nobody ever tells me that I'm good anymore. And I thought, yeah, you just kind of take those guys for granted after a while, And so I was really happy that I called him, and that was the last time I talked to him.
Wow. Well, and the interesting thing about him in Atlantic City, I think even more than Local Hero, is I was constantly aware that that was Burt Lancaster, but it actually enhanced the character he was playing. It was like the mask and the mask and the mask.
He was an interesting guy. He was the first actor to have a production company. If you look at his career, he was really brave. Mm-hmm. He did a lot of against type choices. Come Back Little Sheba and the Birdman of Alcatraz and
Elmer Gantry.
And was he in The Snow Leopard? One of those Italian films, and I think he was really in a way Sweet Smell of Success.
Yeah, we showed that in the festival just a few years ago.
Great
Stunning.
films. He was a really special guy for sure. I was lucky to. work with him.
I know it's a terrible thing to ask you what your favorite is, so I wouldn't ask you your favorite, but among the many actors you've played opposite, male, female, whatever, who among them would be ones you would love to do future projects with?
Ones that I've already worked with.
Yeah.
Well, of course, Nicholson and Sean and Walken. I've worked a few times with Walken. There's so many good actors, and it's harder to find opportunities to work with women because they just, as I said, don't put women together very often. That's why Goldie and I really were very happy to do Banger Sisters, and anytime you get a chance to work, Diane, I ran into Diane Keaton in New York when she was a New Yorker, but you just don't get an opportunity to work with women.
Do you ever crave going back to the stage? Because sometimes you have.
Yeah, I did Exit the King with Jeffrey Rush a couple years ago on Broadway. It was a very difficult play, and I did it because I thought I would want it to be outside of my comfort zone, but it was really uncomfortable. Much more, because the last time I had been on, I had done other plays off Broadway, but the pressure economically is so huge that you have to do so much press, and it was actually a supporting part, but they put my name above, which they said they had to do, and so I felt so much pressure, and again, it was so much about ego and just not having a perspective and having to just do it, even though I was terrified, until I finally got comfortable. But it took me a long time. But that's if you haven't read Exit the King, it's a brilliant play.
Who wrote it?
Ionesco.
Okay.
And it's an old play, but it feels modern because it's so crazy. And Jeffrey had done it twice already in Australia, and he got the Tony, and he just soared through it. And we were kind of plugged into the parts. It was the same director, and we didn't really have time to find it. So I got pretty good by the end, by about the 90th performance. But up until then, I really, every time there was a space, because I was on stage the entire time, and a lot of things repeat, and it's kind of absurd. And so there'd be a pause, and everyone on stage thought it was their problem. We just did not know where we were.
Yeah.
But theater, as you know, takes up so much of your life. You have to really love it. I stopped doing it for the longest time when my kids were growing up because I didn't want to give up my weekends because it was the only time I'd see them. And so there was a long time when I didn't do theater. But the relationship you have with an audience, for better or worse, is, just so magnificent.
And the text, and you have a lot more power as the actor too. I mean,
you have much more control. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. For better or worse, you have a relationship as opposed to film where you're just at the mercy of the editor and whomever.
Where's the microphone? That's really what I need to know. Can the microphone go to one of those lovely hands? Thank you.
Hello, Susan. My name is Iris, and I came from Dominican Republic. So the first time I saw you was with the hunger, and your voice was in Spanish.
I know it's really good in German. I've seen it in German, and it makes a lot of sense in German.
And
In
Espanol didn't make sense, your voice. Your voice is adorable. I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Spanish voice, or?
In Italy, if there's someone that does your dubbing, they do it all the time, so it's the same person. And I've gotten 2 of the awards, the equivalent of the Academy Awards, called a Michelangelo in Italy, and so I split it. I said you should really have one.
That's performance, yeah. I mean,
really, you should have one of these.
What did you get Michelangelo's for?
I don't remember. I think one was Thelma and Louise. They don't give them to you unless you go, so I picked up 2 at one time. Because I had one year and they wouldn't give it to me because I didn't go. And then the next year, I think one was for Thelma and Louise. I'm not sure what the other one was for. I'll have to look. I don't know.
Where's the microphone, please?
Hi, Ms. Sarandon. Thank you for coming out.
Where are you? Where are you?
Right here on the second level.
Oh, okay.
Yep, sorry. For lack of a better term, really, how do you balance being entertaining with being prolific? Because, I mean, like, everything you take on, it's like, you take on stuff with substance, and that's kind of what makes you a cut above the rest. How do you balance, like, doing what you think the meaning of life is and doing your job and doing just everything that you do and how well you do it? In as many or few words as you feel.
I kind of feel like the meaning of life and my job are the same thing. I don't separate them. I kind of feel like my life and my relationships and everything is a work in progress, and I think I have definitely drawn things work-wise towards me that dealt with specific things that maybe it was time for me to examine. I mean, I definitely was in a death mode for a number of films. And so I think it's like people that you bring into your life at certain times, you know, or books that you read at certain times, that you find them and they find you. And so they're all kind of connected. And I try to just look at the process and not the outcome, because I have no control over any of the outcomes, just like relationships, you know, or anything actually in life. So I try not to think strategically and just follow my intuition and follow what interests me and where it takes me. And I mean, I never would have planned to get involved in ping pong. I mean, I don't even play ping pong. We didn't even have a basement. I didn't go to camp.
You don't have to play in a basement.
I have no ping pong past whatsoever. I what? But you have a dream to cling to. Many dreams to cling to.
Would you tell us about the gold ring that you used to wear on your thumb, but now you don't?
I bought this ring for myself. It says in French, one must live not, il faut vivre, non pas seulement exister. One must live, not only exist. And the funny thing was that, and I wore it on this finger, but now it's not fitting that easily on and off this finger. So it's now on that finger. And the weird thing was that I ordered it, and it had to be made and sent to me. And it arrived on the day in French of Louis Malle's memorial, who I had been with for about 3 years. And he was French, so I thought that was kind of a sign that he was
almost a message
sending me. Yeah.
Where's the microphone?
And my daughter, actually, I gave her some pearls that my grandmother had given me, and I made a clasp because she really liked that, and she actually wanted it as a tattoo until she wrote it on her body in pen and realized it was way too long. Although maybe not later, I don't know, but for now anyway. And I did a little new clasp for her thing that had.
So it's kind of becoming the family crest.
Well, at least between she and I. I don't know if my boys are into it at all yet, but
the matriarchal
they have
line.
some time.
Where's the microphone?
In the back.
Okay, let's have raise your hand. Let's see.
Hi, my name is Dolly, and Mrs. Sarandon, my mother absolutely loves you, and I love you as well. I just wanted to let you know. The question that we have is, what is the film that you enjoyed making the most?
Well, that's such a Sophie's Choice question. I mean, I had so much fun on Bull Durham, and as I said, it was very empowering, and I ended up also having 2 children because of it. So that's pretty big. But also doing Dead Man Walking, as painful as it was, to meet someone and be trusted with the book and get it made and produce it and help cast it and work on the script, and to see that go through and to see it have a life, as I said, as a play afterwards and everything, was very satisfying. But I wouldn't say it was the same kind of fun as Bull Durham, but Bull Durham was definitely fun. But the Duplass brothers were great to work with. I just did a movie that hasn't come out with Melissa McCarthy, and you can imagine she's a bundle of laughs. And that'll be out July 4th weekend, where I play her grandma on a road trip that's kind of similar to Thelma and Louise. I've just played 4 back-to-back alcoholic pill-popping people. I don't know why this is happening, to answer your question about, but I have.
It's a passage you go through. I've done it too.
And I don't even like to drink. So, but that was really, really fun because they work in a very improvisational way. And the Duplass brothers also work in a very different way in terms of the way it's shot. You never know if you're in a close-up or a wide shot or a medium shot because they use 2 cameras and they go in and out all the time. And so that's very liberating. And with Melissa, I played her grandmother, and I hope you'll say I'm unrecognizable. But that was very liberating in that way, too, because I'm just ridiculous looking.
I found a really wonderful quote, and I'm going to take it a little out of context, but you said, and it was in a newspaper thing, that the curse of the competent woman, no one opens the door for them. Do you remember saying that was a Telegraph thing?
Yeah.
And you know what, it awakened to me, I think, a really interesting paradox that I think is really present in your work is a heightened sense of femininity and yet also a feminist. And I've also read that there's some issues you have with the word feminist. It might have been, again, a contextual.
No. I consider myself a humanist because I think the word feminist has become very strident even at the time. I mean, I think that we need men as our allies, and we cannot blame a whole gender for problems. And I think that growing up as a feminist who believed in the things that feminists did, but I've also been exposed to the stridency that can happen because people become so frustrated and so angry after years and years and years of injustice or whatever. But you have to work with people. And so I don't embrace that way of getting things done. And I've lobbied a lot, and I've been in the scene where things have gone wrong because you feel empowered because there's thousands and thousands of people on the street, and you go in, you start screaming at people. And that's not the way stuff gets done or things get changed or people come to understand. And Sister Helen actually taught me something really interesting because I had, after 9/11, I was down a lot. I'm a New Yorker.
You were downtown when that happened.
Yeah, and I spent months down there. And at a certain point, a policeman came up to me and was screaming in my face that he'd burned all my videos and that he'd hated me, and his wife hated me now, and was screaming at me because I had been arrested when Diallo was shot 44 times, and because we wanted there to be some kind of investigation, and at first there wasn't. Anyway, he took that very personally. He'd been shot by the police, for those of you that don't know about this incident in New York. And
on his doorstep.
On the doorstep. He was unarmed, and anyway. And I talked to Sister Helen, and I said, I tried to talk to him, and he was just yelling at me, and then he'd leave a space, and I'd try to say something, and then he'd yell again, and nothing was happening. She said, what you have to do, and you see a little bit in the movie, she said, next time give him your phone number and say, if you want to have a cup of coffee and we talk about this, let's listen to each other. Because when people are that emotional and they're screaming at you, nothing gets done. Nobody hears anything. So this whole thing about, feminism, I think it's time that everybody work together for human rights and for our children's future, and that we need each other. And though it's true that most of the grassroots movements that I've been part of have been fueled by women, men are very, very important, and it's important that we see them as allies. And was there another part of your question? I don't remember.
Well, Ken Wilber, who's Siggy's introduced me to, said that if all men are pigs, then all women are sheep, and that if you recognize the error of all of that, and that kind of defensiveness creates exactly what you're talking about. I just thought that was a really fascinating thing about the problem with being competent as a woman.
The thing about being competent as a woman, what I meant by that is when you become, oh my God, I hope I don't send you in the wrong direction, you sweet thing. You can hear this.
She looks like a critical thinker.
She is yes. You want to be strong, and you want to be able to do things for yourself, and you have to be able to do that. And I know that when I raised my daughter, I knew what the pitfalls would be. When I raised my sons, I didn't realize how much the socialization process robs boys of their emotions, of their sweetness, of so much that men have. It made me like men much more when I had boys. And I think that as a woman, you become strong and you learn to do things for yourself, and it becomes more difficult for you to ask for help. It becomes more difficult for people to think that you might want help. and you want to pull your own, but maybe unloading the car, you'd actually like to do less than 50% of unloading the car. Do you know what I mean? The women in Europe have this down. The American women have not figured out how to do this yet. I'm not quite sure how they do it, but that's what I meant. You're a strong woman, but you can't lose the ability to be able to ask for help when you need it. And sometimes you want people to, if somebody says, I'll take care of it, I'm theirs.
And you have to move past feeling criticized, too, I think.
I don't know what it is. I think it's just a habit. You get used to doing it yourself, and I think it takes a lot of conversation to let your man know, your partner know that, you really appreciate it when he does things. And
Lizzie and I were talking about that just 10 minutes ago.
Appreciation is a big thing, and you start to get in patterns, and you forget to help each other, and you forget to do things. And women are raised to nurture, but men are robbed of that opportunity very often. And I remember adding a line in Stepmom where I say to the husband, he said, what are we going to do without you? And basically I confess that I never let him. That was my domain. And so in a way, I never let him know that he could do those things, because as a woman, that was the one place I had control, and that he had never had the opportunity to understand what kind of a father he could have been, to share in some of those things, because I decided that was where I had the power. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very easy thing to happen. But people live so long now, and we're on the moon where relationships are concerned. All the roles are different and confused, and everybody has to find their own way. But it's a great challenge. It's one of the best, mysteries for sure of how to be with another person for any length of time. And then you add kids. Oh my God, it's impossible.
You guys can start raising hands again, but I'm going to ask about the kids. How did you, as an artist, change after children? In any way? Or?
Much less sleep. Made me more vulnerable. My choices were narrower in terms of wanting to fit into school schedules, wanting to, make sure I was there for the stuff that I deemed to be important, or they thought was important. So in that way, it changed. I just had fewer options. And I really had my kids late, so I was very happy to make them the focus.
Right.
That corner over here. Hello, Ms. Sarandon. Thank you so much for coming to visit us. My name is Boyd Lindsley, and there's a few things I just want to say. Personally, I've kind of chased your career. When you were Reggie Love, I fell in love with you. My mother was an alcoholic, so I identified with that. Was hoping my mother would come to be what you did. My father got remarried in 1998 when Stepmom came out, so I keep going with this. But the reason I'm actually...
You're like Zelig. We're somehow linked.
I know, exactly. Want to go have a glass of wine sometime?
Sure.
But the reason I'm actually... This is a comment, and just hopefully to encourage you. I serve on the board of directors for Planned Parenthood of Greater Orlando, and I just want to encourage you to keep up the fight for women's reproductive rights in our country.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much.
And there's a man that obviously is doing his part to help, because he understands that this other 50% of the population, when they're strong, you're strong too. Thank you.
Is the microphone moving towards a hand that is
I think everyone's falling asleep.
Yeah, in the back.
No?
Thank you.
Hi, Ms. Sarandon.
Hi.
My name is Keith. I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you for being here, and I really enjoy your performance.
Thank you.
I actually watched this movie. It came on TV about like a week ago, and I'd seen it several times, and each time I had seen it, especially that scene with you and Sean Penn, where he finally took responsibility, I just kind of broke down, and I really felt the impact of the role that you played as well as what he played, and I just really liked it a lot.
Thank you. I think I'm always stunned when people. This is only my second time I've seen it. Seen it finished. I haven't seen it for many, many years, but I'm always startled when I meet someone that's managed to sit through it more than once, and I think maybe because of the redemption aspect of it is the only thing that I was trying to figure out how people can like to watch it.
Well, I think it was a combination of that, the redemption, but I just got so entrenched, I guess, in the movie itself and the role, and the fact that it was a true story kind of just brought me in even more. But the question that I had was there anybody that you can say that influenced you the most, or has continued to influence you, or has had the biggest influence on you in your career? Thank you.
Oh gosh, I don't know about career. I mean, certainly Sister Helen taught me a lot, doing this movie and having her as a friend and continuing to have her as a friend has been a great, has been very important. I don't know my career. I don't think so in my career.
But maybe even in a broader sense, heroes of yours?
Well, I just love women. I mean, I meet so many women that you wouldn't know that are just like that one, for instance. The way women can multitask and do family and art and write and hold things together, as my son said, when I did Stepmom, my youngest was 5, and that was the first time it had occurred to him that a parent could die. Oh. And he said, but you can't die, you're the glue of our family. And I think that women do this a lot. I mean, this is what we do, especially if you're a mom that's at home and has a job outside. And so most of the women I've known that, people that I've known that have really inspired me have been women that have been, ordinary women doing extraordinary things. Harry Belafonte is an old friend, and the way that he has just put his mind and body on the line for his entire life, and in such a poetic fashion, and so beautiful, is very inspiring. I guess they're different people at different times. I've never really had a mentor. I can't say.
I've been told I have time for one more question, and it's right here.
All right, I'm a little drunk, but...
That's the perfect way to end this evening. Go for it. I love you. That's great.
I loved your movie, Joe.
Oh, wow.
I'm just wondering how
Have you seen it
feel about
lately?
Joe.
Have you seen it since you've grown up?
I think it has stood the test of time. I mean, it really has.
I speak drunk if anybody needs me to translate.
Was there a question in there?
Yes. How do you feel about Joe?
How do you feel about Joe?
I don't feel it holds up. I don't feel it holds up
Really?
at all. No. I mean, I'm happy that I didn't try to act. But when I see it, I felt that what it did, what happened with that movie is that it was supposed to be just like a generational thing. And then they fired the guy that played Joe, who was certifiable, seriously certifiable, and hired Peter Boyle, who had been doing with Second City a whole routine with the silent majority guy, the character. And he brought with it his entire act that he'd been doing. And while they were editing it, there was an incident on Wall Street where the hard hats beat up some hippies. And that's not funny. And so what happened was that they completely, instead of it just being this film about you don't understand me and I'm going to run away and be a hippie, that nobody even knew what drugs we were supposed to be on. I mean, that's how vague this film was to begin with. I just thought it was so much fun to trash. I had one take to trash that store, and it was so much fun that I was hooked on acting ever since that.
And that was your first part.
It was my first part. It was the first time I'd done anything like that. And so when I see it now, I think a lot of it seems, some of the performances are not that strong. Peter's absolutely fabulous. But what happened with that, because of that incident, and because he kills his daughter at the end inadvertently, they called it the Easy Rider of that year. It was a low budget film, and it became this everybody's nightmare that your nice little daughter was going to run off with some guy and go to the village and get high, and you know, she's from a nice family, and then meanwhile you've got this other class thing that's going on that was happening. And so they really lucked out that it became as controversial and that it hit on something. I mean, it's like we were talking, all these different films that have ushered in. I've been very lucky, or it's been strange, to be in a lot of films that have hit right at a time when an issue was peaking. Pretty Baby,
I think it's
The Client,
more than
a lot
luck,
of things.
though. I mean, I really think it's more than luck. And if it is luck, it's our luck. And
oh, thank you.
You're going to think I'm waxing your onion now, and I understand if you feel that way.
I've never heard that expression
I made it up.
before.
I've been trying to get it in general usage for years. You guys, I'm waxing your onion is really the way you say it. But the fact of the matter is, I really do think that there are performers or whatever who are sort of rooted into the shared experience. And like it or not, you're burdened with that.
No, I think I'm very lucky. I think I'm very lucky.
We are too. And the thing about the Joe deal is was it an audition you stumbled into? And since then you've done 80-something films.
No, I think more like 100 and something.
100 and something films and television, theater.
Well, some films for TV, yeah.
You know, and all kinds of things. And so, I don't know, I thank you, nice drunk lady, for choosing that as a topic because it really is important for us to go back to your beginning, and thank you for everything that you've taught us since then, for showing us how not to dream it, but to be it, and everything else in the
thank you all
meantime.
for having me. It's a wonderful festival. Here, let's do it. Can we do it right here?